Hey guys, I'm the 50s kid. This is my new, to me, E90 BMW. It's a 2007 335i with an N54 engine. And in this video, we are gonna take a close look at everything that's wrong with it. So I bought this vehicle as a project car. I wanted there to be some things wrong with it, some things that I would have to fix, but I definitely wanted it to all be problems underneath the hood and not body problems, but you know, you kind of take what you're given. The front bumper definitely has some damage to it. You know, it's got some peeling clear coat right here, and it's cracked right here, and there's some damage here to some paint, and there is a scratch right here. So mostly because of the crack over there in that corner, I'm thinking that I probably just replace the bumper at some point. Decals, those are always going to be deteriorated. Those are really cheap. Otherwise, the hood is fine. There's a ding right here on this fender, but fenders can be replaced. That's like a junkyard swap. You know, I can find another part in a junkyard and swap it over, probably. You know, I'll keep that in the back of my mind, but that's not the biggest deal. Everything else is pretty good. Here, I didn't notice this at first when I was first checking out the car, but there's a lot of dings and dents in the gas door. But again, that can be swapped over. However, there is sort of a little pinch right here. It's not a big deal. You know, mostly you're not really going to notice that. The bumper is really good. Everything's really good. I know you see a couple of scratches, but that can be buffed out. There's otherwise no damage. There's no damage on up here, really. Nothing that can't be, again, buffed out. Let's see, over here. Yeah, we're pretty good. This, again, this right here, that is something that cannot be buffed out, unfortunately. So, yes, there is some damage right there. Oh well. Quarter panels are fine. These up here, these trim strips, are peeling just on these. I wonder why. It's kind of strange. Is that peeling clear coat there as well? That might be. Yeah, a little bit of peeling clear coat there on the top, on the roof, unfortunately. Any damage here? No, all that can be buffed out. There is a spot right here. That spot actually could use some touch-up paint actually, otherwise it might rust, because that damage is down to the metal. So I definitely want to hit that with a little touch-up paint at least. There's also another spot right here, a little one right here. Little things like this, you know, you're going to see, but overall these are not major deal breakers. This fender is good. I don't see any major problems with that. So other than that, the body is pretty good, and you know, when you're taking a step back and looking at it, the body's great. No signs of any major accidents. Anyway, let's take a look inside. So one of the first things I noticed about the interior right off is that the trim on the steering wheel right here is a little deteriorated, a little faded. I might look into replacing that. A little bit of wear up here on the steering wheel, but that's not too big a deal. There's a little bit of wear here on the switch panel. Might want to replace that. Otherwise, the door cards are pretty good. I mean, your typical pitting on the trim. Let's see, one of the major problems is that the radio doesn't work. It won't turn up. It does power on, but no sound. When you turn the ignition on, there are some warning symbols. Let's go through them. These are all for bad lights. There is a bad headlight. One of the adaptive headlights is out. And then that SOS symbol right there, that signifies a common problem with BMWs when the radio goes out. It signifies that one of the modules in the whole audio system is likely dead. And so we need to sort of diagnose which one it is and do a fix for that. So we'll do a DIY on that coming up. Let's see. As far as the climate control system, all of that works. This cup holder does not pop out. You have to kind of pull it out manually, which is fun. Very common problem, easy to replace. Let's see, the trim is all good over there. The seats are really good. Could be cleaned up a little bit, but there's no major rips or tears, not in the driver's seat either. This is all good right here. The rear window regulator actually doesn't work. I actually missed this when I was evaluating the car. I definitely tried the sunroof. The sunroof works. That was one of the things I tried. Asked the seller if he was all right with that. He was like, I don't know, it's a BMW. Yeah. So that definitely works. But, you know, I failed to test all the windows. Of course, you know, there's always something you forget when you're going to buy a used car again after so many years. In fact, I think I probably will do a separate video just on how to buy an E90 used, because there's a lot of information I have in my head right now about it. For some reason, this trim in the rear is really deteriorated. I have no idea how it got this bad, because the rest of the vehicle looks like the seats look so brand new back here. It doesn't look like this person had kids or anything. So that I don't get why that piece of trim is really deteriorated, but I will get another one. There's a little bit of dirt here. I don't know if that's a clue as to why that's bad, but that can be cleaned up, I'm sure. And let's see, it's got these rubber mats, which are not stock, but I actually really like them. I'm thinking about getting them for my E46 as well. I just got brand new regular floor mats for my E46, but they're already getting dirty, especially the driver's one. And yeah, I think I'm gonna get rubber mats for that too. So as far as the interior, that's about it on the interior. Not too much to do, which is what I wanted. One thing I forgot to mention on the exterior, its interior-exterior, is this thing has tinted windows, which I hate. I hate tinted windows with a passion, because this is what happens to window tinting over time. I hate this so much. And I know from experience that this is going to be a nightmare to try to get off. I will try. I mean, it's very difficult to see out the back of this thing already. It's all obscured and stuff. It's not good. I will try to get this off. Basically, you take a heat gun to it, which you don't want to do on a 90-degree day, which we've been having lately. But yeah, you take a heat gun and hopefully it peels off easy. And if I did this on the X3 that I worked on a couple years ago, and oh my God, it was a complete nightmare. No solvent I found could really touch that glue, and it needed the heat gun and a lot of heat, and it just took forever and forever. And it's especially difficult with rear windows, because they've got the FM diversity antennas on them, and you're going to end up damaging that if you're scraping and whatnot. So if it goes really badly, I'm just going to replace the glass. It's just easier to replace the glass. I don't care. So what else is wrong? The window switch under here is actually, or the trunk switch is actually, it was bad. I've already replaced it. It was just completely deteriorated. And just from judging by all the cars I've seen in the junkyard, all the 328s, that's an extremely common problem. So I already replaced that. That was super cheap. It was like $15. I had to replace it. And then these trunk struts are just completely dead on both sides. So those are gonna need to be replaced. We'll do a DIY on that. The trunk is good. There's some staining right here. That's not too big a deal. I'm sure I can find another one of these in a junkyard eventually. Yeah, but so underneath the hood here, the first thing I noticed is that it's completely stock. You know, there are no aftermarket air filters or anything like that, which would signify that this was previously owned by a boy racer who, you know, had modded the thing out and basically just like ruined the turbos, because that's what's going to happen. The amazing thing about these cars is they're one of the few cars where you can just buy an off-the-shelf tune, plug it in, and instantly make 80 more horsepower, and then potentially make even more with installing an aftermarket intercooler and an aftermarket charge pipe, aftermarket air intakes, all that stuff. So you can potentially make up to 200 extra horsepower just on a off-the-shelf tune that you can get, which is amazing. And so that's why these cars are really popular right now. Everybody wants them so they can just mod them out. Undecided if I'm going to do that with this one, but I love the fact that it's stock, because it means that hopefully we will have turbos that are in as good of a condition as possible. Other things that I noticed, let me actually, I've staged a couple of things here. I just want to take some of these things off so that I can show you guys a few more things. Okay, we're gonna dig into some nuts and bolts here. First, I notice it's got one of these air filters on it. I guess that's the washable kind. The other thing I noticed about it, I mean, it seems fairly clean. It's a little bit dirty under there, but one thing I did notice, when it's in there where it goes, it's not really sealing along this side right here. So that's great. Definitely gonna replace that with just an ordinary paper air filter. Now, one of the big jobs that you got to do on this car is the oil filter housing gasket. At least this one's nice and high up. On the N52, N51, N52, you can actually do this without removing the intake because you can get at this bolt, which is right back in here. But on this car, there's literally no room to get it. You just cannot. Let me see if I can get my phone. See that bolt right there? Even if you got down in there, you can see that the intake folds right over front of it. So there's literally no way to get even a wrench on top of that bolt. It's just impossible. So what you have to do is actually loosen the intake and kind of lift it out a little bit. And then that gives you all the room to finally be able to get to that bolt. Now, one thing I do notice is that these bolts, there's 3 of them here, that one I showed you, and then one back here. I noticed that these bolts are mangled. Somebody has definitely changed the oil filter housing gasket on this once before, which makes sense because the belt is not all covered with oil and I don't see a bunch of oil leaking. So somebody did that job, which is good, because if you don't do that job and you leave the oil leaking on your belt, it's going to destroy the belt. Oil on a belt will just eat right through the rubber, and that belt could actually get sucked inside of the engine through the front crankshaft seal. So you definitely don't want that to happen. That's happened on a bunch of cars. So definitely change that when you get the chance. Now, I don't know how long ago it's been done, and of course I still need to make the video for it. So I'm gonna make the video, I'm gonna change it even though I can see it's been changed. But another thing I notice here is, so you see how there's oil down there? Oil down inside right there. I can definitely see it. You can see fresh oil. But you can see there's oil down in there. So that tells me that the oil, that the valve cover gasket definitely needs to be changed. I would have assumed that a mechanic who did this would have cleaned up the area and whatnot, but just judging by how dirty everything is, it doesn't look like it has been done. And another thing I did notice was I was looking at the high pressure fuel injectors here. These are the high pressure fuel injectors right here. And down in there, so do you see the 10 at the end of that number right there? This is an index 10 fuel injector. That's what you do. You find the part number, and it's going to be the part number and then a dash and then 10. Now I've looked and all of them are index 10s except for the one in the back, strangely enough. And it looks like, I mean, of course, it looks like they've definitely been removed. You know, these lines have been removed. I see tool marks along every one of these. But then again, I'm not sure that I see tool marks on the back one. No, I definitely see tool marks on the back one. So either, see, I'm not sure why. This one's an 07, an index 7, and the rest of them are index 10s. So either the line could have been removed when they did a valve cover gasket, and you know, this valve cover gasket's been done and they just never cleaned up after themselves. It could be that. Or it could be they just had all the fuel injectors out and put the 7 back in for some reason. I'm not really sure. But it's kind of interesting, the clues that you find when you kind of dig into an engine and look at things. Really, really pretty interesting. Now, another big thing to check would be how worn the turbo wastegates are. So right here, we're looking at the vacuum actuator, the rod, and let me zoom in a little bit. All right, what we're looking at here is the vacuum actuator. That's right here. And there's the rod that comes down here and connects to a little shaft that's going through a bushing that's pounded in the side of the turbo housing, and then the wastegate is inside of the turbo housing. So when this rod moves back and forth, the thing pivots like this and it opens or closes the wastegate. And what happens is this little brass thing that you see right here, that is the bushing. And of course there's a rod inside of that, and that bushing and that rod sort of wear out. Okay, and then they develop play. And eventually you're going to get a 30 FF code, which means low boost. And what's happening there is even when the wastegate closes, it's unable to just close. There's so much play that it closes and then it opens up again a little bit. And so what you need to do in order to figure out how bad yours is when the car's off and the wastegate's just naturally open, you can reach down in there and you can sort of feel it. So there's going to be a little bit of play in the pivot point right here, because this is an arm that's coming down, and then the rod is connected down to the bottom of the arm, right? So here's where the rod is connected. Here's where the actual pivot point is, right here. So you just want to feel this part right here, and you want to rock it back and forth and see how much play there is. Now I have a very, very small amount of play. I mean, tiny. It's not huge. It's not so huge that it's going to rock like this. It's not rocking huge like that at all. So that's why I don't have a 30 FF code. These turbos are actually or the wastegates are actually in pretty decent condition. Yes, there's a little bit of wear, but I don't believe it's significant, which is really, really cool. Now, you see that on the rod, this part of the rod, it's threaded right here, and then there's a nut right here. All you have to do to adjust them is you back off the nut, and then you turn the rod, turn it that way towards the passenger side, and that will turn the rod in, and that'll take up the slack in there, and then you tighten the nut back down, and there you go. You've sort of alleviated your problem for the time being. Of course, it's not going to fix it permanently, but it's sort of a quick fix to get you by until you need to replace the turbos. I don't believe I need to do it at all, because it feels pretty good. There's not a lot of slack in there. That's really good. I'm happy about that. So another thing I noticed is a little bit of coolant up over here and right around here. So obviously there was some sort of a coolant leak at some point. It could have been when somebody was filling it, to be honest with you. They might not have wiped it up. It could be that, but then again, the heat blanket is kind of deteriorated. When these get wet, that's what happened, and that's what happens, and they sort of shrink. So you see how this is like not really staying in where it goes anymore. So the thing is kind of shrunk a little bit. So that could have been when it got wet with coolant. I don't really know. But this engine's pretty rock solid. It's not like the E46 when it overheats. It's got it pulls the head studs out and all that stuff. It's not notorious for that. It's kind of solid. But I will do a compression test at some point anyway, just to make sure. Other things that go wrong with this engine, so many things. The high pressure fuel injectors, again, we already mentioned that. Those like to go bad, and ideally you want to have index 11 or index 12s. Those are the new updated redesigned part, the latest one. We don't have that on this car, which kind of sucks, but hopefully these ones will be good for quite a while. Coils and plugs. The old BMW coils used to work just fine, the ones on the E46, and then they decided, oh, let's take something that's working fine and completely change it to something that sucks. These coils just go bad so often. I mean, it's to the point where once you're starting to feel some misfires a little bit, or the engine's kind of shaking a little bit, just replace all your coils, because if one's going, all of them are going to go. And that is happening sometimes on this car, sometimes. So we're just going to replace all the plugs and coils. You do the plugs at the same time because you just might as well. So that's definitely going to be a DIY. Like I said, we'll do a DIY on the oil filter housing gasket. We'll do one on the valve cover gasket because I cannot be sure whether it's been done or not. Let's see. Oh, the vacuum solenoids for the turbo, having problems with those. That's causing me an overboost code. So we're definitely going to do a DIY on replacing those. We'll test them first to figure out which one's actually bad. Let's see, what else? Lots of little DIYs to do on this car. Of course, the electric water pump. These things have electric water pump, and it loves to just die randomly. So I cannot be sure whether it's been changed or not. Again, I have no history on the car. I unfortunately bought it from a wholesaler, so he had no history. So we're going to replace that just for peace of mind's sake. Another thing is the high pressure fuel pump. Those go bad so often that there's actually there's been a lawsuit about them, and BMW covered them for, at this point, up to 10 years and 150,000 miles. This thing is 14 years old and it has 151,000 miles. So I've missed that by a couple years, but that's okay. So I will eventually take the intake off and inspect and see how old that thing is, and if it's been replaced once before. I really hope that it has, and I kind of think it has, just because these are index 10 and then you've got an index 7 fuel injector. Tells me that maybe that was an issue on this car before and they took care of it. We're definitely going to do one video just on changing all of the vacuum lines on the engine and refreshing them, making sure they're good. So I just want to do that in its own little video, just so that that you guys have that reference. So I have had the car up on jack stands and had a look underneath. All of the suspension members look good. I don't find any obvious completely worn out bushings at all. I forgot to look at the struts to see if they were OEM or not, or if they've been replaced, or if they're leaking and all that. So I'm gonna have to do that again and take a look. But we'll probably do a DIY on those anyway. And let's see, of course the oil pan gasket's leaking. Typical BMW, they just put a much bigger plastic shield on the bottom of the car to kind of hide all the sins, rather than actually putting engineering money into re-engineering that oil pan gasket and making one that doesn't leak. So yeah, of course it's leaking, and eventually we will do that DIY, but that's going to be last because that's not super critical, and you need to drop the engine cradle, the engine subframe, in order to do that. And it's like, when you do that, you might as well do something with the turbos. Again, these are good, but maybe we'll swap them out for bigger turbos. I mean, I haven't decided yet what I want to do with this car. It kind of all depends on what you guys want to see. What do you think I should do with this car? Should I mod it out? Should I do videos on all the mods you can do with this car? Should it just be DIY videos? What do you guys want to see? Let me know. I would appreciate it if you would leave a comment below and let me know what you want to see on this car. Anyway, I'm sure there's going to be lots of other videos to come, so stay tuned, guys. I'm really excited about this one. It's great that we finally have an E90 on the channel. If you like this video, give me a thumbs up, subscribe if you want to see more. I'm the 50s Kid. Thanks a lot for watching.